Margaret was 71 years old, and every single morning, she dreaded the first 10 steps out of bed. Her knees would lock up like rusty hinges, and she would have to hold on to the nightstand just to stand up straight. She thought this was simply what getting older felt like. But one Tuesday morning, everything changed. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why her knees stopped hurting within 11 days. Without a single pill, without a single dollar spent, and without ever stepping foot in a physical therapy clinic. If you are over 60, and you have noticed that your knees, hips, or ankles feel stiffer in the morning than they used to, you are not imagining it, and you are definitely not alone. Doctors have a name for this, and most people your age have never even heard of it. It is called morning joint gel, and once you understand what is actually happening inside your joints while you sleep, the solution becomes almost embarrassingly simple. Here is what most people get wrong. They assume stiff knees mean worn-out cartilage, arthritis, or simply bad luck with genetics. And sometimes, yes, that plays a role. But for a huge number of seniors, the real problem has nothing to do with damage at all. It has to do with something called synovial fluid, the natural lubricant that coats the inside of every joint in your body. Think of it like oil in a car engine. When you are active during the day, that fluid moves, warms up, and keeps everything gliding smoothly. But when you lie still for 7 or 8 hours overnight, that fluid thickens, almost like honey left in a cold refrigerator. That thickened fluid is exactly why your first steps in the morning feel like walking on gravel. Margaret's daughter, a nurse named Carol, noticed her mother wincing every morning at breakfast. Carol had seen this pattern before in her patients, and she suspected it was not arthritis at all, but something far more fixable. So she asked her mother to try one thing, just one, for 2 weeks, before assuming the worst, and scheduling another round of expensive scans. The habit was almost laughably small. Before Margaret's feet ever touched the floor, while she was still lying flat in bed, she would slowly draw circles with her ankles. 10 circles one way, 10 circles the other way, on each foot. Then she would gently pull each knee toward her chest, hold for 5 seconds, and release. The entire routine took under 90 seconds. No equipment. No getting up, no pain. Just slow, deliberate movement while still horizontal, warming the joint fluid before gravity and body weight demanded anything from her stiff, sleep-thickened knees. Now, you might be thinking, 90 seconds sounds too small to matter. And that is exactly what Margaret thought too, on day 1. But here is the piece almost nobody explains, and it is the real reason this works when other advice fails. Your joints do not need a hard workout first thing in the morning. What they need is what physical therapists call gentle, controlled range of motion, movement that pumps fresh synovial fluid into the joint space before you ask that joint to bear your full body weight. Skip this step, and you are essentially asking a cold, thick fluid joint to absorb the shock of standing. And that is precisely when stiffness, and sometimes real pain, sets in. By day 4, Margaret noticed something small but unmistakable. She could reach the bathroom without holding the wall. By day 8, she was standing up from her armchair without that familiar groan escaping her lips. And by day 11, when her daughter Carol asked her to rate her morning stiffness from 1 to 10, Margaret paused, genuinely surprised, and said it was barely a 2, down from what had been a solid 7 just under 2 weeks earlier. But Margaret's story is not just about ankle circles and knee pulls. And staying with me for the next few minutes matters, because there is a second piece to this puzzle that almost nobody talks about. And it might be the more important one for people over 60. That second piece is hydration, and specifically, the timing of when you drink water. Synovial fluid, the very lubricant we just talked about, is made mostly of water. If you are even mildly dehydrated, which becomes increasingly common as we age because our sense of thirst naturally weakens over the decades, that joint fluid becomes thicker and less effective at its job. Many seniors go all night without a single sip of water, sometimes 8 or 9 hours, and then wonder why their joints feel like they need oiling in the morning. Carol had her mother keep a small glass of water on the nightstand and encouraged her to take a few sips right when she woke up, even before her feet touched the floor, right alongside those gentle ankle and knee movements. Here is something that might surprise you, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. Researchers who study joint health in older adults have found that this combination, gentle pre-standing movement paired with proper hydration, can meaningfully reduce that first-hour morning stiffness that so many people simply accept as an unavoidable part of aging. It is not a cure for arthritis, and anyone telling you it replaces medical care when you have genuine joint damage is not being honest with you. But for the millions of seniors whose stiffness comes primarily from inactivity overnight and mild dehydration, rather than structural damage, this simple shift can feel almost like turning back the clock. Now let's talk about something Carol insisted her mother avoid. Something that surprised Margaret at first. Because for years she had been doing the exact opposite, believing it was helping her. Margaret used to reach for a heating pad the moment her knees felt stiff in the morning, wrapping it around her knee while she ate breakfast. It felt soothing in the moment, but Carol gently explained why this habit, while comforting, was not actually solving the underlying problem. And in some cases, applying heat to a joint before it has moved at all can encourage swelling to settle in rather than clear out. Instead, Carol recommended movement first. Always movement first. And only using warmth later in the day if muscles around the joint, not the joint itself, felt tight from activity. This is the part of the story where most videos would simply end, wrapping things up with Margaret feeling better and calling it a happy conclusion. But there is one more layer here that deserves your full attention, especially if you have been dealing with this for months or even years, because it explains why some people try gentle morning movement and still do not see the results they were hoping for. The missing ingredient is consistency paired with gradual progression. Margaret's routine on day 1 looked identical to her routine on day 11. Just ankle circles and knee pulls. But by week 3, Carol had her mother slowly add gentle seated leg extensions before standing. Still low impact, still gentle, but building a small amount of strength in the muscles that support the knee joint itself. This matters because your joints do not work alone. They are held together and supported by the muscles surrounding them. And when those muscles weaken, even slightly, from years of sitting more and moving less, the joint itself has to absorb more stress than it was designed to handle. Strengthening those supporting muscles, even gently, even slowly, takes pressure off the joint and often reduces pain that people had assumed was permanent. If you are watching this and thinking of your own mother, father, grandmother, or grandfather, or if you yourself have felt that familiar morning stiffness and simply accepted it as the price of getting older, I want you to hear this clearly. What Margaret experienced was not a miracle, and it was not luck. It was a small, deliberate change, repeated daily, built on an understanding of how her body actually worked while she slept and while she moved. Nothing about her story required expensive equipment, a gym membership, or hours of free time. It required 90 seconds before her feet touched the floor, a few sips of water, and 2 weeks of patience. Of course, every body is different, and if your joint pain is severe, sudden, accompanied by swelling, redness, or warmth, or if it is significantly limiting your daily life, that is a conversation to have with your doctor, not something to self-treat through a video. This story is about the gentle, everyday stiffness that so many people over 60 experience and simply accept, when in reality, a large portion of it may be far more manageable than they have been told. Margaret still does her ankle circles and knee pulls every single morning, even now, months later. Not because her knees still hurt, but because she learned something important, that a little bit of understanding, applied consistently, can quietly change how you feel every single day for the rest of your life. And if there is one thing worth remembering from her story, it is this. Sometimes the biggest relief does not come from a new medication or a new doctor, but from finally understanding what your own body has been trying to tell you all along. There is one last detail Carol changed for her mother, and it is so overlooked that most seniors go their entire lives never hearing about it. Yet it may matter just as much as anything we have already covered. It was Margaret's sleeping position. For years, Margaret slept curled tightly on her side, knees bent up toward her chest, the same position she had slept in since she was a young woman. It felt natural, even comforting. But holding the knees in a tightly bent position for 7 or 8 straight hours means the joint stays compressed the entire night, with almost no fluid movement at all, which only adds to that morning gel effect we talked about earlier. Carol suggested a small pillow placed between Margaret's knees when she slept on her side, just enough to keep the joints slightly more open rather than jammed tightly together. It sounds like such a small adjustment that it hardly seems worth mentioning, yet Margaret said within a week. Her knees felt noticeably less swollen in the morning, even before she started her ankle circles. This is really the heart of what Carol was teaching her mother. Aging joints are not broken machines waiting to fail. They simply need a little more care than they did 30 years ago. A little more warmth before movement. A little more water. A little more attention to how they rest overnight. None of it is complicated. It simply requires knowing what your joints actually need, instead of accepting stiffness as an unchangeable fact of growing older. If this story reminded you of someone in your life, someone who winces every morning getting out of bed, someone who has quietly accepted stiffness as just a part of getting older, consider sharing it with them today. And if you found this helpful, subscribe, because every week we bring you real, practical, gentle habits that help you move through life with a little more ease and a little less pain. One small step at a time.